Hit it, Phil.
Can it be the breeze that fills the trees with rare and magic perfume? Oh, no, it isn't the breeze. It's Jackson time. La, da, da, da.
Well, Jello again. This is Buck Benny speaking. Today we're continuing our discussion of how Jack met whoever on his television show. And today's is how Jack met Dennis. An interesting episode for sure. We're going to be talking about some unfortunate things in this episode as well, but it's just the way they go. It's funny that every single one of these how Jack met so-and-so episodes all have some sort of racial stereotype or racial issue in each one. You wouldn't think that would be a theme through them, but it kind of unfortunately is. So anyway, we'll get started. Let's go over to Terry, since Terry has not been with us in a number of weeks, and it's lovely to have him back. Terry, what things stood out for you in this episode? I'm sure you'll point out something that's unique and interesting.
The first, something very positive.
Yeah.
The first, this is not a spoiler in any way, the first song that we hear Dennis sing is Cocktails for Two. And as with so many other songs that have a comic version, I can't help but laugh when I hear that song anymore, because there was a famous Spike Jones interpretation of Cocktails for Two. And so anyway, that was a big grin for me. Something else I wanted to point out for our younger listeners and viewers is that this episode was presented in 1964. I was 11 years old at the time. And so it was no surprise to me, but it might be a surprise to younger viewers or listeners that telephone numbers included both numbers and letters. The prefix for telephone numbers back in the day were usually a two-letter beginning, and then 5 more, or actually even before that, 4 more. There was a time when there were only 6 digits in a telephone number instead of 7, not counting area codes. Anyway, that shouldn't be a shock when people hear, H0432 whatever. That was a real thing.
So does that represent like the area? Did they just shorten it? Because Pennsylvania 65000.
Exactly. Yeah. So area. Pennsylvania, for example, was PE. So
yes. Okay. Yeah.
On the dial. That's
well, and like for me, we had the same phone number. We've had the same phone number since I don't know if it was when I was born, but it's early on. And for years, we always referred to it as the first 3 digits. It's 839. We always refer to it as 839. But for years, it was VE9, and so it was VE9 and the rest of our phone number. Right. And sometime it was late 70s, early 80s, sometime in there, we stopped saying VE9 and started saying it. Everybody just started referring to everything with all numbers. 839. I think it's when the area code became a big piece that you had to start using. And it's like, okay, well, if you're going to use all numbers and then all of a sudden in the middle of it, you're going to have 2 letters, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. They just went to all numbers that they used.
John, having worked for the phone company for a while in my early career, I know a little bit too much about this subject, so I won't bore you with too many details. But
I don't want to derail us, but I have to know. Did you literally dial it? Like, were there numbers written on? And so
were. If you look at an older telephone,
it's still on there. Yeah,
there are letters.
Right. Letters
for almost for 8 of the 10 digits. 1 doesn't have any and 0 doesn't have any. 0 was for the operator. You would dial 0 to call the operator. And the others, beginning with 2, corresponded to A, B, or C, and so forth.
Right.
Well, if you use your phone today, if you pull out your phone and go to dial someone, it still has those numbers on there, because a lot of places use the letters instead of numbers. Like
that's right.
Pemco is 1-800-GO-PEMCO or something like that, but it's all sorts of numbers. But yeah.
But the phone company used these names which corresponded to the central office for each area, each region within a city, for instance.
Like Gladstone 9623, like that kind of like call sign in front of it. I hear that on like not just Jack shows, but
when I was growing up, the neighborhood where we lived was connected to the central office called Amherst, and so our first letters were AM6, Amherst 6. Anyway, so
this kind of riveting conversation is why you
a long way to go.
Wonderful.
But I think it might have been a curiosity for some people.
It is. No, it's good.
Younger than we are.
It certainly provided clarity for me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So one last surprise for me was that Jack asked Dennis at the end of this conversation, at the end of this episode, how much money he was earning today. And he said $3,000 a week. And I have no idea, A, if that was accurate, and B, whether that was, I presume, at this time, a lot of money. But I just thought it was interesting and unexpected that they would pull out that number.
Oh, we could pull up the inflation calculator and find out. So
now
I'll go.
I shouldn't stop without making mention of the topic that I presume will dominate the rest of this conversation, which is the way different ethnicities and races were portrayed. In 1964, it was still very current to make fun of people from other places and who look different than people who look like us on this panel look. This level of xenophobia was not generally considered to be taboo. Today, it's hard to imagine that an episode like this would be written, let alone produced. Correct. But I just have to mention one of the actors, and then I'll leave the rest of this to you all. But Benny Rubin, who we've seen in many other episodes, was a very talented portrayer of people from other places in the world. And in this episode, he plays somebody who's Italian. And he does it at the famous Italian accent, how people pretend to be Italian. Yeah. I am not Italian, so it doesn't offend me, but I can imagine that if I were, what I just did might be off-putting. And similarly with, and more extremely with the way Dennis does a Chinese impression, I think a lot of Chinese people and Asians in general might find offensive. So if we haven't done it yet, here's a warning for all of you who might be sensitive to this.
Yes. On all these how Jack met somebody, check your sensitivity at the door. So.
It doesn't mean that it was done in order to offend. This was a current form of comedy, and having grown up in that era, I still find it funny, but I understand that a lot of people don't, and I tend not to.
It's a trend that you watch any of these shows from the past within your own comfort zone. You don't you don't force it upon people. You let them accept it on the terms that it has within the contextual within the context of its era, while not excusing it. And there's a lot of I'm basically expressing the same sentiments, within the exception that I don't particularly find Dennis funny when he does this, because he's done this before. During the war years, specifically when we were going against Japan in the war, there's a lot of the so sorry please discussion or talk that he does. But Dennis was a dialectician, essentially. He knew how to pull out a dialect, and I think that the thinking for this episode was, well, Dennis is good at dialects, let's give him a place to stretch his dialect routines. And in the process, they're going to a place that really only 2 years prior, like 2 or 3 years prior, we just had breakfast at Tiffany's with Mickey Rooney. Andy Rooney was nowhere near breakfast at Tiffany's. Doing that character in Breakfast at Tiffany's. And I've talked about this on my show before. The question that came up was, well, if they didn't do this stereotype, what stereotype were they going to do? So it's incumbent to recognize that this was a thing you fell back on in the era as a place for key comedy. And there are arguments to make within it about there being a cultural melting pot aesthetic where there isn't an intent to offend, but to actually include all races and creeds, but in the process they're still going off of what comedically gets humor with that. And the quality varies show by show, depending on how Jack and the writers dealt with it specifically.
Well, for sure.
Right.
The thing I was going to say regarding this whole episode is it's one of these sad things that I would be like, I wish it would have been more like how Jack met Mary, in that if it would have been truly at least loosely based on Dennis and his yes please that essentially got him the job on the show. If it would have been if Mary would have been available and they would have actually had Mary discover him and then bring Jack to see him or something to that effect, it would have been so much richer to Jack Benny fans to watch an episode that had a little piece of reality in it, whereas this one is pretty much completely fanciful and doesn't have any of those bits. But anyway, John, you have something to throw on there?
Well, I was just going to say, even if it wasn't reality, if it's consistent with the Jack Benny lore, this is sort of just like a fantastic out there zany thing. Whereas when they did How Jack Met Dennis as part of How Jack Met the Cast in the radio show, they're basically like, he says, I'm looking for a singer. Mary says, I found one, I'll bring him over. And then he does his silly kid routine that drives Jack nuts. And so I thought, that was more fun, even apart from all the rest of the stuff, the insensitivity and all that. Like it I feel like is not as funny, and maybe it's just not my sense of humor, you know what I mean? I feel like you watch something like I Love Lucy, when she's doing the conveyor belt, or they do the same thing in The Honeymooners, right? And there's this sort of like zaniness and like madcap kind of thing, or whatever you want to call it. But one thing that I think is lacking in this episode, and I'm not sure why, maybe somebody else knows, is the audience is not into it. Maybe I don't know if it's pre-recorded and it's just like really bad, like I can't remember if it's just really bad, like he's in there. But if this was a live version with the audience there, maybe they would have been on the floor laughing, and even if I didn't find it funny, I was having fun with everybody.
Right.
Yeah, no, they couldn't have done such an elaborate a restaurant setting with the live audience.
Well, also it's 1964. They're not going to do anything live in 64. It's all filmed by that time.
Exactly. I would like to. I can finally answer Terry's question. $3,000 a week in 1964 is $27,000 a week here. So
$27,207.87.
Exactly.
Wow.
So I'll also say the Benny Show, there are not as many fabulous shows. By 64, I think the writers are feeling kind of tired. Benny is starting to get grief from as while his show is still doing okay, it's kind of sliding down the ratings poll. But this is not the only episode. He does the one with the Japanese singer and Jack Sue, the Dragnet episode. So it seems to me you could never have gotten away with doing a blackface minstrel show in 1964, but old-fashioned entertainment, just as you all have said, was still so tied up in that vaudeville kind of, hey, the funniest thing is to hear somebody else's accent, whether it's melting pot or othering. And that had been so much a part of radio comedy. When you can't see people, playing with accents was one way, because they were always afraid of everybody sounding all the same, 5 people around a microphone where the audience couldn't tell them apart. So it just seems to me that there was a long legacy of using ethnic accent humor. But it's very sad, but kind of like with our current reactions to the Seaside So routine, Benny's writers are being very careful with African Americans, pretty careful, but there's still this sort of draw of kind of the newest immigrants, and so Mexicans and folks from Central and Latin America, will do the Seaside So routine, and the influx of more Asians to become Asian Americans. This is not the only show that's doing it, but it was so a long and mixed up legacy.
Even in the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, which is 60s, they've got a lot of the same, Chinese accents that are, and these exact same stereotypes. Yeah.
Or appropriation of culture within any other animation company like Hong Kong Phooey. There's a disconnect that I think ends up getting not addressed, but shifted in a different direction by the 70s. I mean, we're still kind of in a we're in a period where television is blossoming, film is dying out, that you have comedy still kind of sticking to its vaudeville tendons as opposed to what folks like Lenny Bruce and Pryor and Carlin were doing on their own in different sections of the late 60s. The thing that I take when it comes to how he's portraying other races versus African Americans, you know, it's a complicated discussion all around, but one thing within the specific representation of Asian Americans in this specifically is that we are in a post-war world where we have dropped the bomb, and the fact that there's only consideration for one and not the entirety of the community, I find very curious, because it seems like, given the edict that Jack had, it would make more sense to adjust all representation going forward.
Right.
And I don't know what the full, I will never know the full reasoning. We can pretty much guarantee that it's not Jack doing it intentionally. It's going off a tradition that he knew in vaudeville.
Right, but Zach, it was everywhere. The Frito Bandito and the way Chinese food was sold. So it was everywhere in the culture that it was okay.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that it was acceptable to make fun of the sort of newest groups of immigrants to America. They said, yes, we feel very differently now, but I think that kind of helps set up some of the context.
And I'd like to interject that, just as with my knowledge of how the telephone system worked back in the day, being the son of immigrants, I can also tell you how the culture worked back in the day. And we made my parents and grandparents and other relatives made fun of their own cultures and other cultures. We all saw it on television, on variety shows. The Ed Sullivan Show always had a stand-up who would do not just ethnic and racial accents, but, you know, imitating celebrities was an important part of entertainment. And so imitation, supposedly the highest form of flattery, often also was felt offensively by those who were portrayed in a negative way. It wasn't just that they were being imitated in a funny way. It's that was the only way they were being portrayed.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
I think that's the missing part in retrospect. Sure, I laughed and still laugh at some of those tired, old, and for many people, offensive jokes. I engaged in it for a long time, and I'm more careful about it now. But it's, you know, when it's in your bones and in your history, it's hard to shed it completely. And I think for us looking back half a century or more today, it's unfair to say, well, they should have, or why didn't they? Because that's the way it was.
Right.
Not that it was right, just that it was factual.
And it's interesting considering that of all the jokes that are done at Dennis's expense, being Irish probably ranks at the top. And
Sure.
it's kind of strange that they don't capitalize on that for this episode, because one key ingredient that is missing from How Jack Met Dennis is Verna Felton. And with that combined with the slew of albums that he's doing that feature songs like Same Old Shillelagh, Clancy Lower the Boom and stuff like that, you got to wonder, like, why didn't you go for that? Like, I'm not advocating to go to one stereotype over another, but it's like, why didn't you do that? Out of all the things you could have done, this seems like the most random of all. Like,
Right. Yeah, agreed.
it's
Well,
like they just like put ideas in a blender.
I'll throw out one more piece in closing this up. For me, what stood out is that $3,000 a month for Dennis, but for a different reason, because over on the International Jack Benny Fan Club page, Facebook page, someone posted an article about Kenny Baker leaving the show, and it was saying he walked away from $3,000 a week. So and that's in 1938. So my question is, was Jack really as generous as we've said, or did he simply say, well, my tenor deserves $3,000 a week whenever he gets it, so it never changes?
Yes. No, that's not. The contracts I have seen are more like $600 and $900 a week.
Oh yeah,
$100.
I
So
see,
it's
and
not
that's what I was thinking
$3,000.
when I was reading the article. It was written from the point of view of Kenny, and Kenny
Yeah.
going, well, I didn't want to
Sure.
stay at this job even though it was paying me really well, $3,000
Yeah.
a week, which of course is not what he was getting paid. to be a jerk of a character. And I didn't think he was a jerk of a character, really. He was portrayed as dumb,
Well,
but he wasn't
I
portrayed
think
as a
jerk
jerk,
meant dumb
really.
back then.
What was that?
I say jerk meant dumb back then. It didn't mean like mean and nasty. I thought the same
Okay,
thing
so
when I
just a
started.
different
When he
definition
said,
of jerk,
"I'm a
then.
jerk," I'm like, "What? That doesn't make any sense." But I've looked it up, and apparently, you know, it's sort of that naive, dumb kind of kid. I want to end
was
on
just thinking, if he would have worked with Jack probably would have changed the character somewhat to keep Kenny on there. Certainly with Dennis, they broadened it out quite a bit.
But even
to allow him to do voices, to allow him to do a lot of things. I just think part of it was Kenny limiting himself and just sort of going, well, I'm just going to move on.
Even when
and
he
then trying to
moved
make
to
it
Fred
sound good,
Allen-
like, hey, I left a $3,000 a week job, which it was not a $3,000 a week job. So yeah, I agree, Kathy.
This episode doesn't even have Kenny Baker, but maybe he was a bit of a jerk, because even when he moved on to the Fred Allen show, he played the same
he's a
sort of
real jerk.
character. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't want to end talking about this episode without mentioning that even though the end is not maybe the best episode of Jack Benny I've ever seen,
The beginning.
there's some great gags at the beginning, some visual gags that you couldn't do live and were so funny. So
The
yeah.
palm
I had
tree. The palm
nightmares.
tree.
I had nightmares.
No, definitely an episode worth watching. And so I hope you guys enjoy it and just take it for what it's worth. There's some things that don't work as well as others in this episode. But I don't know what we can ask from something from 1964 anyway. And you just got to remember the time that it's in. But thanks for joining us, everybody. And we'll see you guys next time. All right.
All right.
From Hollywood, the Jack Benny Program. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our show. Now, before I start, before I say anything at all, I must read you a letter that I got from a lady in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I have to read this. I just got it just when I got into the studio. It says, "Dear Jack, I call you by your first name because I feel that I know you so well. I've been watching you ever since you've been on television, and I can't get over how good you look on TV. Year after year, you never seem to change. You always look the same. How do you do it?" Now, I don't want to brag. I mean, this isn't the only letter I've gotten asking this question. I get thousands of them, you see. And of course, this is very flattering, but I must confess that in order to keep looking good, and this isn't cheating. I mean, no, this is just good showmanship, you see. In order to keep looking good, every year I make the camera move back. Every year, they move back a little further. In fact, right now, I'm here, and the camera is in Pomona. Now, to give you an idea what a difference this makes, I'll show you what I look like when the camera is real close to me. I'll show you. There's one. Oh, Fred, give me that close-up camera, will you please? The close-up. That's enough. Go back to the long shot. Ladies and gentlemen, that shows you what can be done with camera technique. And if you think that was something, you should see me in the morning. Without makeup. And now, ladies and gentlemen, to get on with the show, I know you're always anxious to welcome my singing star, so right now I'd like to bring him out, Dennis Day.
Thank you, thank you. Tonight, I would like to sing a song that I hope that you'll enjoy. It's a wonderful song that is really from
Wait a minute, hold it just a minute, Dennis.
What's the matter?
What's that?
It's a palm tree.
I know it's a palm tree. I mean, why did you bring it out here?
It's for my song. You're so cheap, you never get me any scenery.
Well, Dennis, what's wrong with being in front of a curtain?
Nothing if you're a window.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you forever.
Well, you hadn't better, because everybody knows that it's much easier for a singer to sell the lyrics of a song if he can work with something that can help him convey the mood and the meaning of the words.
Well, Dennis, I certainly can't argue with you there. If you think that this tree, with this palm tree, will help you with your song, why, go ahead and use it.
Okay? In some secluded rendezvous that overlooks the avenue, with someone sharing a delight, and that, and cocktails for two, as we enjoy a cigarette.
Wait a minute, Dennis. Hold it.
What'd you stop me for?
I had to stop you. You made such a big thing about needing scenery to sing a song. Just answer me one question.
Yes, sir.
What has a palm tree got to do with two people drinking cocktails?
Well, they drink a lot of cocktails.
All right, they drink a lot of cocktails. What has a palm tree got to do with it?
It's potted. Boy, are you stupid.
Dennis, will you do me a favor? Sing the song you're supposed to sing, not this one. Sing it with the tree, without the tree, in the tree, on top of the tree. Just sing it.
Close up, please. More than the greatest love the world has known, this is the love I'll give to you alone. More than the simple words I try to say, I only live to love you more each day. More than you'll ever know, my arms long to hold you so. My life will be in your keeping, waking, sleeping, laughing, weeping. Longer than always is a long, long time. Far beyond forever, you'll be mine. I know I never lived before, and my heart is very sure no one else could love you more. No one else could love you
Now, let's see, where was I? Oh, yes, I was going to tell you exactly how I found Dennis. Now, it was back in the days when I was on radio, you know, and I had a program for several years, and I was doing very well with it. And at that particular time, I was looking for a singer. So I talked to my agent about it, and one day I dropped into his office to see if he had found me one.
I got you. Now, Harry, don't worry about a thing. Will you please? We'll work it out some way. Come in. Come in, sit down. Listen, Harry, I'll call you back, huh, baby? Jack Benny just came in. Jack Benny. Well, someday you will. Jackie boy, I'm glad you dropped in. What can I do for you?
What can you do for me? I asked you a long time ago to try to find a fellow for my program, a singer.
Yes, of course you did. Now, Jackie boy, you're my most precious client. And you know that I wouldn't do anything without giving your problem a lot of thought. I got great news for you.
You have?
If you're still looking for a singer, I got a kid that may be just what you're looking for.
Who?
Now, he's singing with a band now. I don't think he's making too much money. Let's see here. His name is, here it is. Frank Sinatra.
No, I saw him. He's a skinny kid with no personality. I mean, he's almost as bad as that other guy you tried to palm off on me, that Bing Crosby with that. Who needs that? So far, you've come up with nobody.
Nobody? What about the kid I sent up to see you last week, that Perry Como? Didn't you like his voice?
Well, he's got a nice voice, but he's too aggressive. He jumps around too much. He's too fast. He sings too much. I don't want that kind. Look, they're all baritones. I want someone with a higher voice, you know.
How about Jessica Dragonette?
Well, he's all right, but he's not, you know, look, I want a young fella, a singer with a lot of talent and personality and a great comedy potential.
And you want to pay him $35 a week.
That's right. I want a nice, cheap Morton Downey.
Well, Jackie boy, I'm telling you right now, for that kind of money, you're not going to find anybody. They just... Hey, wait a minute. An agent friend of mine dropped in here about a month ago. He handles unknowns. He brought a record in here with him of a kid who may be just what you're looking for. Where is it? Here it is. And the kid's name is Dennis Day.
Let's hear it. Let's hear the record. It's a small one. Dennis Day.
Go ahead, kid, sing. Dennis,
Yes, please?
I already put in the quarter. Start singing.
Now?
Sure, can't you see the record going around?
Yeah, it makes me dizzy.
Well, face the other way and sing.
Okay. The pale moon was rising above the green mountain. The sun was declining.
What happened?
That's it. They must have run out of quarters.
But look at it. Now, that's what I was looking for, a beautiful high voice like that. That's what I want. Where can I get him?
Wait a minute. I think I saw his phone number right here on the record.
What is it?
There it is. HO 2469.
Okay, I'll call him. I'll call him right
Good,
now.
go ahead.
See if I can get him. What is that?
HO 2469.
No, wait a minute. HO
2469.
9. Now, that's what I want. That's the kind of a voice.
Hello, Luigi's a fish market.
Luigi's Fish Market? Is this HO 2469?
Sure.
Have you got somebody working there about Dennis Day?
You mean the kid where you go around all the time and sing the Irish song?
Yeah, that's him. Let me talk to him.
He ain't no worker here no more. I fired him.
You fired him? Why?
I come in one morning and I find him stiff as a board.
You mean he was drunk?
No. He locked himself in the freeze. Some stupid.
Well, where can I get in touch with them?
I don't know. You looking for some ice cream company? Hey, wait a minute. I got over here in a piece of paper the name. Give me see. The name. Busy Bee Ice Cream Parlor. You wanted the number?
Yes.
MA6079. And please, don't bother me no more.
That's MA6079. I'll call. MA6079.
6079.
I got it.
Busy Bee Ice Cream Parlor.
I'd like to speak to Dennis Day, please.
No, he's not here anymore. We fired him.
You fired him?
We had to. Ever since he came, our ice cream smells from fish.
Fish?
Our Neapolitan became mackerel, herring, and halibut.
Oh.
He was a nice kid, kept singing all the time, had a real beautiful voice.
Well, that's it. Well, I heard him say, with that voice, he should be in show business.
Yeah, let's see. I think I heard that he's at the Lotus Blossom Inn now.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. He is in show business. He's at the Lotus Blossom Inn.
Lotus Blossom. Jack, I've seen the floor shows there. They're not too good. Now, if I were you, I'd go down and talk to the kid, and maybe he'll leave them and go with you.
It's a great idea, Steve. I'll do that. I'll go right down there now.
Glad to see you,
I want to hear him. I want to hear him sing.
Drop in anytime.
Okay, kid. So long, Steve.
Good evening, sir. One for dinner?
No, I'm going to eat later. I wonder about, have you a fella here, Dennis Day, working here?
Dennis Day?
No.
Oh, you mean I take you home again, Kathleen, across the ocean wide and wide.
Yes, that's the fella. I came over here tonight because I want to watch him work.
You want to watch him work?
Yes.
Take a good look.
He works in the kitchen?
Stop singing! Customer waiting for chow mein.
I can't get over it. I thought he was singing in the floor show.
No, not sing. He pussy food. He slingy head. He not singer, he slinger.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. You mind if I go over and talk to him?
Sure. Talk to you all you want.
Oh. Pardon me. I'm here to,
I thought you were a waiter.
Well, look, I'm not a waiter. Look, I'm Jack Benny.
Jack who?
Benny. Does my name mean something to you?
Oh, yeah. You ordered the chow mein to go.
I didn't order anything.
Oh.
Now, look, kid. You're Dennis Day. I said, now, look, kid. Your meeting me here could be a turning point in your life. I mean, I can give you an opportunity.
Hey, boy, answer phone. Oh, excuse me. Hello, Lotus Blossom Inn, best chop suey, never gooey. What you like order, please? Oh, number 4 dinner for 5 people, very good. Number 4 dinner, you get some gum chow mein, pork fried light, fried shrimp, and fortune cookie. You don't want number 4 dinner, you want number 5 dinner for 4 people. Oh, for 4 people on number 5 dinner, you take away almond duck. No. So sorry. Cannot leave almond duck on dinner for 4. Must be dinner for 5. Or you like it dinner for 5, but you only know 4 people. When you find friend, call it back. Bye-bye. Oh, I'm sorry, your chow mein will be ready to go in a minute.
Look, I didn't order chow mein. Now, look, here's why I'm here. I want you to work for me.
Gee, well, what kind of a restaurant do you have?
I haven't got a restaurant.
2 fried rice. Oh, 2 fried rice.
Here's what I want.
Out of the way.
Look, Dennis. Look, I haven't got...
Yeah.
Look, I have a radio program, and I want you to sing for me. I want you to be a singer on my show.
Gee, I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? You made a record, you spoke to an agent. I thought you wanted to be in show business.
Well, that was before I was doing so good here.
Doing so good?
I've had 3 promotions already.
And you've built up to this?
Yeah. You know, when I first came here, they had me testing the oil that they fried the shrimp in. Ooh, my elbow.
That was a wonderful job.
And then they promoted me to chicken picker.
You mean chicken plucker?
No, chicken picker. You see, all the chow mein that came back into the kitchen, I picked out the good pieces of chicken.
Look, Dennis, I think it would be much better if you will come on my radio. This is no job for you. At least you can sing.
And now I'm the food server, and if this works out, you know what they're gonna do?
What?
They're gonna make me 3rd assistant fortune cookie stuffer.
No!
Look like Chip.
Dennis, please. All the way. If you will sing.
All the way.
Now look, Dennis.
Yeah.
I know that you hate to leave a Shangri-La like this. But if you come on my show, remember, I got a radio show goes from coast to coast. You'll be a big star, and you know something?
Yeah.
I will give you $25 a week.
25. Gee, that sounds good.
Wait a minute. He pay you 25, I pay you 30. You very valuable man here.
Oh, yeah? Well, I'll pay you $31.
I pay you 32. Hey, stop.
Gum chow! Gee, I only guessed at it. Look, Dennis, I'll pay you $35 a week, and that's final.
Well, what kind of a guarantee will you give me?
I can't give you a guarantee, Dennis. I haven't watched your work. I heard you sing or anything, except on a record.
I hate to quit here before I get a guarantee.
Well, look, step over here and sing something for me. Just let me see what when you're singing.
Yeah.
I'll sing something nice, and then maybe I can give you.
What would you like to hear?
What's a good song? What do you know?
How about a nice Irish ballad, Galway Bay?
Wonderful. Go ahead. That'll be beautiful.
If you ever go across the seas to Ireland, then maybe at the closing
Beautiful. That's
of your
beautiful.
day,
Absolutely
give me some
beautiful.
moment and watch
Look at
the
it.
moon rise.
Jack will be back in just a moment, but first...
This is what I wore 20 years ago. I never throw anything away. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you all enjoyed the show, and that's exactly how I found Dennis Day. Dennis, come on. Well, Dennis, you've been with me now for over 20 years. Now, I want to tell you, look, a lot of people think that I'm cheap and stingy because that's a character I portray, you know. But tell the audience, how much, after 20 years, how much am I paying you now?
Well,
Now, go ahead, tell them.
$3,000 a week.
There you are, $3,000 a week. Now, that wasn't hard to say, was it?
No.
Well, look at Dennis. I remember some time ago, I asked you to say the same thing, and you refused. Why was that?
That was Washington's birthday.
Oh, yes. Well, so long, kid.
Jung-hao.
Yeah. Good night, folks. I'll be seeing you soon.